Hello everyone, and I hope everyone can hear me okay. A little bit of noise going on here, that's why, because I've got three large animals at my feet. I'm just trying to dance around them with my bowl of food. So my name's Dean Ward, and you may or may not know me from Great Wilbraham. I've lived there all my life, nearly 47 years now. And my dad grew up in the village, Barry Ward, and my mum, Denise Ward, live in the village on Mill Road. I live down Squiresfield, so hello to all the Squiresfield gang. But most of my time is spent at Shepreth Wildlife Park, and I've been here since 2007. So I started as a volunteer. I was lucky once I left university to become a keeper, one of the keepers here. Became a head keeper, and now during lockdown, I was lucky to be made a curator here. So I'm in charge of quite a large part of the park, and a curator's role is quite varied. So it can be animals, but it can be sorting out toilets for customers, or making sure the ordering's done for the food. So it's quite a varied job, but it's a very exciting job. The hours can be long. I usually start hopefully about 7:30, but it was a bit later this morning. I did have a bit of a lie-in this morning. But I do try to get here as early as possible. And my day usually finishes probably about 5:30, but sometimes I do come in the evenings if there's an animal that needs medication. Obviously, it's not a job you can just walk away from. So when we have animals that are poorly, we have to watch them. That is part of our job as well. So it's like 24 hours really, you're on call. But I love Great Wilbraham. However, I love being in Wilbraham. It's part of my life. I don't think I'll ever move. I'm a bit of a hobbit in that way. But so I'm going to show you some animals in here. I'm going to talk about why the park is here and the history of the park. I'm going to talk about the charity that is connected to the park, SWCC. And I'm going to also talk to you about why zoos are so important to animal conservation nowadays. And zoos and captive animals, quite a controversial subject, but in a way I'm glad it is, because I think we should always have that subject on our minds and question why we do what we do, and what is going on out in the wild as well, why these animals are actually in the zoos and wildlife parks as it is. So I've got three very desperate aardvark at my feet. So I've got a bowl of mealworms, which they lovingly knocked over just before we started with Zoom call. So I'm going to put that on the floor for them, and I'm going to switch this video around so you're not looking at me all the time. If I can work out how to do that. Here we go. No. Yes, here we are. There we go. So they're better to look at than me. These are the aardvark. There's one outside at the moment, Indy, and I've got two in here. So this is Saphira, and we've got Elsie as well just here. And as I say, they knocked their mealworms over. They've got mealworms in here, and the mealworms are in some shavings, so they have to get to the mealworms through the shavings. They've got very, very long tongues, amazingly long tongues. And those tongues are coated in like a saliva, quite a thick saliva. And part of that reason is to be able to collect as many insects on your tongue as possible at one time. But also these guys in Africa, they're going to be taking down termite mounds. They're going to be digging up ant nests as well. Now, termites and ants are notorious for biting, nipping. So they wanted to protect that tongue. So that extra saliva will actually protect the tongue at the same time. I've got a male, quite a young male in the middle there, that's Indy, and two females here. Saphira is about 8 years old, and Elsie here is about 6 years old. With aardvark, it's hard to tell how many are actually left in the wild. They're quite elusive animals. They spend a lot of time underground sleeping, and definitely here at Shepreth, they spend about 20 hours a day sleeping. So they've got a nice underfloor heating, better heating than I have. So on a cold day, if I have 5 minutes, I will come in here and have a lie down with them. But they got quite a nice large house and an outdoor area just through the tunnel there as well. So aardvark are known as a key animal in their environment. Now, a key animal is an animal that has an effect on plants and other species around it. So these guys, the burrows they create, will eventually become home to things like hyena, jackal. They also propagate a cucumber. It's called the aardvark cucumber, the only animal that actually propagates this cucumber. So they'll feed on that, and where they're pooed, hopefully a cucumber plant will grow. So quite amazing animals in that respect. As I say, part of the food chain as well. These guys would make a nice meal for something like a lioness, would take those down. They're probably a bit big for something like a cheetah maybe, but definitely a big cat like a lion would definitely predate on an aardvark. So they want to stay as safe as possible. Hello there. Part of that would be to be nocturnal. So they come out at night. They're quite elusive. They've got these fantastic, great big ears. They can hear danger quite a distance off. They haven't got fantastic eyesight. They do suffer a bit in that way, but certainly that hearing, that very sensitive snout that they have is very important, especially for sniffing out insects in the wild. They have massive feet, huge feet, and they're for digging. The front ones for tearing down termite mounds, as I say, and they can actually defend themselves with those massive front paws. Hello there. And now they're very interested in the phone. You can see that snout up close. So yeah, really amazing animals. We've had them on the park probably about 5 years. These three didn't come from the same location. One come from Wales, one from Poland, and one I think from Colchester Zoo. So they came from 3 different sites, but they got on straight away. Now, usually when you're introducing animals in captivity, it can be very difficult for them to bond with each other. Primates, it takes a long time. Sometimes you have to keep them in separate enclosures, but with like a wire mesh between them so they can see each other, they can smell each other, so they get used to each other being around. But with aardvark, we didn't have to worry too much. Me and my colleagues sat in a big room with them, and straight away they had bonded and they got on straight away, so that was fantastic. They eat a variety of food here at Shepreth, so we give them mealworms, moyo worms, which is a bigger worm like a mealworm. They also get black crickets and something called termant. I think we've got some termant in the bowl. It's evening food just over here. It's like a gruel. It's something we make up. It's full of protein. Also, they get cooked veg. We've got some insects in there as well, so they can snack on those overnight as well if they want to. But basically, they need lots of protein. Not massively active animals, and I think if you spend a lot of the time sleeping, you don't need all that energy all the time. So in the wild, they can conserve a lot of energy by being quite inactive. But certainly, when mum has pups out in the wild, she will protect them against predators, and they will be underground for quite a long time, and they'll come up to the surface, and when they're a certain age, and that's when she has to be extra vigilant and look after her young then. We'll have a quick look outside, but it's really dark at the moment. I was just saying earlier on the call, it's nice coming to the park when it is pitch black. It's kind of eerie in a way. Oh, you can't see anything out. But they've got a nice big outdoor area just outside as well that they can dig in. There's lots of sand out there, and we change it around quite a lot. That's for enrichment for the animal. So enrichment is important for all our species on site, and obviously we get enrichment by reading books. Like we said earlier, go for coffee mornings. That's great enrichment for people. Just meeting people, chatting. And it's the same with any species on site. We need to keep them occupied, keep their brains and bodies working, making sure that they are enjoying each other's company, enjoying these surroundings, and it can be quite difficult. So Shepreth Wildlife Park started in the 80s as a rescue site, and they would rescue animals that had been in road traffic accidents, so they had injuries. They would also take on exotic animals which have been abandoned. And Terry Willers, who still lives on the park, he started the park with his family, and it just grew and grew. And eventually they had to make the decision, you're not going in there, they had to make the decision whether they go down the wildlife park route or the rescue route. And they chose the wildlife park route simply because you can actually do a lot of conservation breeding, and that's what we do with most of the animals on site. So there's things called EEPs, European Endangered Breeding Programs, and ESBs as well. These guys are very active at night. ESBs. And these breeding programs are really, really important. So the breeding programs are put in place so we can breed because they unfortunately suffer a lot in the wild. So in the wild, for example, we've got Sumatran tigers on site, and there's very few Sumatran tigers left in the wild. About 100 years ago, there were roughly about 100,000 tigers in total. That's all subspecies across the planet. Nowadays, there's probably less than 4,000 left. So that's a drop of 96% of all tigers on the planet. And the reason for this, obviously, is human interaction. So we have knocked down a lot of their natural habitat, and we've taken them for things like the medicine trade and the fur trade. There's lots of reasons that animals like the tigers are disappearing from the wild. Also, the palm oil industry. So if you knock down a habitat, they're not going to be able to function properly, and they're not going to be able to find a mate or find food. So it's going to make their life very difficult indeed. And unfortunately, lots of animals suffer like this. So these EEPs and the ESBs are put in place to protect these animals and breed them in captivity, so they are successful in captivity. The aardvark are actually going outside now, so I'm going to go back to me just briefly, and if they come back in, we will have another look at them. So there's always a stud bookkeeper in charge of these breeding programs, and he or she will tell us who can breed with who. They will move animals around as well. And no money changes hands when animals move between sites. We have a very good relationship with all zoos and wildlife parks across Europe. And so no money will change hands when an animal moves. It's all for the breeding program, which is really important. We like to justify here at Shepreth why we have animals on site. The meerkats. Now, everyone loves seeing a meerkat. They're fantastic animals to see. Lots of children love seeing a meerkat, but we can no longer justify having them in captivity because they are high in population in the wild. The reason for this is the birds of prey that would predate on a meerkat have dropped in population. So that's had a knock-on effect to the meerkats. They have grown in population, meaning they are successful again. It's bad for the birds of prey, obviously, and there's good conservation work going out in Africa, bird of prey conservation. But certainly with the meerkats, we no longer need them in captivity. And it's not a good reason enough to say we'd like seeing them at zoos, though there's another counter argument to that. It does bring money in. So obviously people like seeing meerkats in captivity. They like seeing, not in captivity, but they like seeing meerkats. So it does bring people through the door. So as a zookeeper, I think if you ever said you were 100% happy being a zookeeper, you probably wouldn't be honest with yourself. There's always in that back of your mind that you are keeping animals in captivity. And I think that's why I always encourage people to speak about captive animals, about zoos and their place in conservation nowadays. I think if we stopped having that conversation about conservation, we wouldn't really be doing our job. So when people come to the park and they might say, I am anti-zoo, I do love that conversation because it's important for me and it's important for them to hear both sides, really. So it does make an interesting sort of argument. I'm now in an empty big room without aardvark. They've all gone outside digging. So hopefully they'll be back in just a moment. You don't have to look at me all the time, and we'll see some aardvarks again in a moment. So we have a charity on site called Shepreth Wildlife Conservation Charity. And we raise money for this charity, and all that money goes to charities across the world. One of those is Vets International, and Vets International do an amazing job looking after tigers. One of the aardvarks just come back in, so let's have a look at those. Vets International do an amazing job looking after tigers in the wild. They help support and employ wardens, and they speak to the local people. It's no good us going out there and telling a country how to run the place. It's important that you let local people run this conservation, and they do an amazing job. Vets International, as I say, they employ wardens, and they create what's called conservation corridors as well. The conservation corridors brings natural habitat, brings species together. So like a tiger will come together with another tiger to breed through these conservation corridors. So BIAZA is a British Institute of Aquariums and Zoos Association, and as part of the remit for being part of them, for that membership, we have to do conservation on site actively, and we have to show that we also do research on site as well. These guys are never usually this active. I think it's because I come in here tonight. They're usually outside digging at night, but they're very active at the moment inside. So yes, the charities we support through SWCC, very important for the species in the wild as well. So we just recently had Elephant Day, even though we don't have elephants on site, and albeit we've raised £1,700 for elephant charities, and all that money will go out to the wild to support the elephant charities. And we also have Tiger Day every year, Hedgehog Day, because we have the Hedgehog Hospital on site. And I know some people from Wilburn support the Hedgehog Hospital, which is fantastic. So thank you for all your hard work in doing that. And we have some release sites in Great Wilbraham and Little Wilbraham from the Hedgehog Hospital. So if you want to be a release site, you can always get in touch with them. The release sites have to be quite strictly observed, so they're not always adequate. But you can always get in touch with them. And if you want to volunteer, again, you just look at our website, and there's some opportunities to volunteer either on the park or in the Hedgehog Hospital as well. So you can always ask, and if you want to spend your time with the animals on site as well. In regards to sort of husbandry and healthcare of the animals, obviously, we've got a large team here who clean the animals out every day. We do the feeds in the morning and take those around. We also do educational talks on site as well, which is really important. We do talks every half hour. Part of our remit as well is to educate people when they come to the park, to explain why we have the animals on site and if they're part of a breeding program. So that is part of our day. It's quite a hard day. It's outdoors a lot. Unless you're a reptile keeper, then it's indoors a lot. Phil, our reptile keeper, he has a nice time in the winter. Perhaps in the summertime when it's nice and warm outside, he doesn't get to see that so much. But definitely, it is quite hard work. And it's interesting, my keychain at the moment. There we go. And it is hard work, but it is so enjoyable. I always say I'll never be rich, but I'll always be happy. And I think that's quite an important thing nowadays, especially with so much emphasis on things like mental health. We need to make sure we're happy and content in our work. And definitely this work, although it's long hours sometimes, I am always happy, which is nice. Again, they're going outside, but that's fine. Oh, hello, Elsie. I also look after the nocturnal house, and we've just been able to open that up again after COVID. The nocturnal house, obviously, bats can catch COVID from us, as can primates, as can carnivores as well. So we do have to mask up quite a lot on site. That's a very important part of protocol. And our nocturnal house was recently opened up again to the public, which is fantastic. It's lovely that people can go back in there. It's like a free flight area that they can walk through. As I say, we've got the tigers as well, and we do big tiger talk. Hello there. Big tiger talk every day as well, which is an amazing thing to do. So I do feel very honoured to work with these species. I try not to take it for granted. Obviously, this is like my office. I used to work for Cambridge University Library for many, many years. So it's a big difference coming to work in a zoo now but certainly it's very, very enjoyable as well. If you do want to come to Shepreth, it's along the A10 between Royston and Cambridge. Do have a look at our website, and it's got directions on there. Or if you see me around the village, do come up and ask. I hope you can hear me okay. They're scratching quite a lot in here. They like scratching the walls quite a lot. Do come along and chat to me if you see me around the village as well. I tell you what, I'm going to go to a slightly quieter exhibit. We're going to come out of here. I think it's because I've gone in at night. I don't need to go in at night. Now, it's going to go quite dark for a little bit, but we're going to walk around the park and hopefully you'll be able to see me. We've got some lights on. That's our tiger enclosure just over there. We've got the tiger security lights. When we're working with the tigers, we work in what's called a buddy system. That's very important. There's been some terrible tragedies in the past. As I say, with the zookeeping, you have to be safe. You have to keep yourself safe as well as the animals. So it's very important that we work in a buddy system because we're always checking each other's locks. Now we're going to just quickly go and see the meerkats. I was talking about them earlier, and they've got an exhibit over here. They may well all be in bed, all tucked up, but we're just going to go in and see if they're about, because there's a little bit more light in here. Let's have a look. Bear with me. Here we go. This is a meerkat. Oh, there's a meerkat. Let me show you a meerkat. Not that you haven't seen a meerkat, but they're less noisy than the aardvark. Well, I'm so good at technology, you wouldn't believe it. There we go. So there's a meerkat just come out of this burrow just over there underneath the lamp. So in here we've got the big heat lamp on at the moment. And again, they've got an indoor area, which is this part, and they've got an outdoor area through a tunnel just next door. There's an important part of it is enclosure design. You want to keep the animals safe. You want to keep them interested as well. You see we've got all climbing apparatus in here. We do move everything around in here. With the meerkats, it's quite funny. Once we move their furniture around, they suddenly become very, very interested for about 10 minutes, and then they ignore it because they get used to it very quickly. So with these guys, because they're so intelligent animals, we do put a lot of enrichment in here. You can see we've got a bucket down here that we would have put insects in today and thrown in here. It's got little holes in it, so the insects fall through the hole. You can put bags and boxes in here for enrichment as well. Also, you can, we believe it or not, we bring the birds of prey over here. Now, a bird of prey is a predator of a meerkat, but the bird of prey is always what's called fed up. That means it's full up. So we get the term fed up from falconry. It means it doesn't really want to do anything. It's sat on the glove. So we fill it up with chicks or mice, and then it'll just sit on the glove. But to the meerkat, it's actually called a positive stress. Now, we try to avoid stress as much as possible, but stress is important to us and it's important to animals. If we took stress away from our lives completely, we wouldn't be able to cope with certain situations. We wouldn't know our place in a hierarchy. Whenever danger comes along, we'd panic. So it's important that they get a bit of stress in their lives, but this is called positive stress. A vet once said to me, if you've got two animals not getting on very well, pop them in a crate, walk them around the park, or take them for a little drive in the car, and you're guaranteed they'll start to get on because they're sharing that experience together. Now, you don't want negative stress. Negative stress is when you're chasing an animal around, you're cornering it, you're picking it up unnecessarily. A lot of people always say to me, one question I always get is, do you hug your animals? No, I don't hug my animals. They're not here to be hugged. They're here for other reasons than that. They are cute, lovely animals to work with, but we're not bunny huggers here. So it's important. We keep our distance from the animals as much as we need to. Obviously, we do train our animals as well, so we can train them, target train them. And there's no meerkats about now. Honestly, we do have meerkats in here. We did see one, its head pop up there. I hope I haven't been, oh, there it is. It's just popped out again. Hello, mate. Are you coming out? So I hope I haven't been chatting too long. I don't know if anyone's got any questions or anything. If you have, please do ask.
Absolutely. Does anyone want to chime in with a question? I might start off in terms of,
yeah.
Are you thinking seriously of as it were getting rid of the meerkats, or is that more of a sort of philosophical thing? Where do you think that debate between conservation and bringing in the public is going to land?
Yeah, so we have a 5-year plan, and meerkats are part of that 5-year plan. We don't breed here anymore, so this is a non-breeding group. And we've made that decision on purpose because we want to bring a mongoose in here that we can breed for conservation reasons, like the yellow mongoose. We also have Cusimants on site, and they actually share the pit with the aardvark. They're probably in their bed at the moment. But Cusimants is a relative of the meerkat, and they are on an EEP. So there's a lot of thought gone into the animals we have on site. Now, say 10, 20 years ago, meerkats would be a big part of most zoos and wildlife parks, but I think they're going towards probably taking them off their lists and getting in animals they can breed for those conservation reasons. So it is a philosophical question as well, because we've obviously debated it quite a lot. On site, we also have an ethics committee. Now, that ethics committee is not made up of all keepers. It's made up of our vet. It's made up of an independent person who has nothing to do with the zoo. It is made up, actually, there is one keeper in there. So our most recent keeper is always on the ethics committee. Our director is on there. There's an independent vet as well. So it's our vet and an independent vet as well. And the sort of questions that go to this ethics committee are things like, should we keep meerkats any longer in the zoo? And any decisions made in that ethics committee are put in place, really. So it's not us keepers thinking, oh, I want to keep meerkats. I love meerkats. Let's keep meerkats. It's not our decision to make, which is a good thing. And hopefully most zoos and wildlife parks act in a similar way as well.
Martin, would you like to ask?
Yes, we were on safari in Kenya, and they took us on a night safari.
Oh, fantastic!
And we saw the elephants, heard the lions, but then they came across an aardvark.
Oh, so wonderful!
Seen them in well, you say wonderful, but the jeep was insistent. The guide was insistent on showing us as much as possible. So he chased these aardvarks around. And I can vouch for their digging skills because they dug like mad. But it was really quite a worrying situation.
Yeah, absolutely, Martin. When I went out to Kenya, we were on a university trip, and there were many jeeps out there when we were out there as well. And obviously they all want to get their jeep to see the big animals. And there were a couple of lions sitting under a tree, and I remember all these jeeps suddenly turned up, and we sort of asked our driver, can we sort of drive away? We don't really want to be part of that. So conservation and tourism, again, is a difficult subject. Madagascar now, it costs a lot of money to go across to Madagascar now because of ecotourism, and that's probably a good thing. Does it take money away from that country? It does. Does it mean that there's probably less impact on the animal? It does. So there's a lot of questions to be asked about ecotourism and about conservation. But I mean, Kenya, I'm sure you agree, Martin, lovely country and beautiful people as well. Absolutely.
I mean, I also spent some time in San Diego. So we did the San Diego Zoo.
Yeah.
California. Now I don't think there are any bars at all. It's all natural habitat with moats around it.
Yeah.
Do you aspire to that sort of thing?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. So San Diego has a very, very, very good name in zoos and wildlife parks, and it's somewhere I would love to go and visit. It's probably one of the top zoos on the planet. Yes, we do where we can. So our Lima Island, the only barrier to it is water. So lemurs don't like going in water. So we have to go across on a boat every day. Our Tamarin and Marmoset Islands, again, has a water barrier. So when you're designing enclosures, you want the public to see the animals, but you want also the animals to be able to get away from the public site. And that might sound quite strange, but it's important for animals to have part of an enclosure where they can't be seen. And sometimes we do get people, it's quite frustrating, they come to the park and they say, oh, I can't see any animals. And then I do take them round and I show them where the animals are. They get to see the animals, but I also explain why sometimes they can't see the animals. I think that's part of the reason we want good enclosures, really, so that the animals feel safe. They're not looked upon all the time, and you can sort of see them from a distance. There's a great primate zoo in Holland, Appendor, I think it's called, and they've got a massive gorilla area. And the only way you can see this gorilla area, I believe, is from one part of the zoo, and they've got like seating around, and they call the gorillas over and do a talk about the gorilla. But yeah, if you've got the space and the money, it would be great to have fantastic enclosures. I think in this country, unless you're a top zoo like one of the ZSL zoos or Chester, it's very difficult to fund large enclosures, large amazing enclosures. There's always heating, lighting, which you have to give the animals, water source, whether that be sort of flowing water. So I think if money was no object, that would be an amazing thing to do. And I think enclosure design is always something that's on our mind as well. And also, if you're not 100% happy with your enclosures, you take that home, you think about it all the time. Maybe you don't sleep all the time. So it can be quite stressful because you want the best for your animals all the time as well. Yeah, but that's an interesting point, Martin.
Thank you. Brigitte, shall I read out the question?
Yes.
Meerkats and aardvarks have day-night routine. Do they have a day-night? Sorry. Do they have a day-night 12-hour repeat, Shepreth?
Yes, absolutely, and that even is in our nocturnal house as well. So we have lighting that changes subtly over a period of time to reflect day and night. Now, with our bats, it's important to see me to be there when they're active and they're feeding. So we do actually swap their day and night around. All animals on site have UV lighting as well, because a lot of these animals will come from countries where they get a lot more sunlight than they do here. Even if an animal is outside here, they would still, in the summertime, it would still not be the same amount of UV they would get in their own countries. So everywhere has UV lamps, which come on as well. But we do swap day and night around for the nocturnal house. We've got Pygmy slow loris in there. It's the world's only venomous primate. We do it in their enclosure as well. With the meerkats and the aardvark, they have their outside area that they have access to all the time. So they can go out in the day, and it's quite funny in the summertime. Indy loves sitting out in the sunshine, and he gets burnt ears, so I have to put sun cream on his ears to make sure he doesn't burn. He loves just sitting out in the sun. We do have to get him inside sometimes because he likes sitting out there too much. So we do swap their day and nights around as well, or we put on dark lighting for the aardvark during the day. That light I had on in the aardvarks was just working light. Usually it would be dark in there because they would be coming out at night. They would be coming from a tunnel, which is obviously dark as well. So they do have that option. We try to give them as much options as possible in regards to lighting. Just quickly on heating as well, it's no good heating an enclosure the same temperature throughout. You want to give it fluctuations through an enclosure so that the animal can decide where to go. And you want to also, humidity is an important thing as well for a lot of animals, especially animals like our Pygmy slow loris. You have to think of a range of humidities through an enclosure as well.
Thank you. I can't see everybody. So
Dean, just a quick question.
Yeah.
You've obviously got a lot of different species there which eat a lot of different food types.
Yeah.
Where do you source your food from, and what's probably the most exotic food you have to get?
Very good question. So we get a lot of dry feed in. So that is from Missouri. It's a company who make a lot of specialized zoo food. Some of that is something called leaf eater. Also trio munch, which is really good for the primates. And these dry feeds contain the proteins that they need. So we get a lot of dry feed brought in. We also get donations from local garden centres. I don't know if anyone's been to Berry Lane, which is just along the A10 near us. They donate fruit and veg every day, which is amazing. Tesco's, Waitrose ring us up sometimes and say they've got loads of leftover food. I think Christmas time, it's quite scary to see the amount of leftover food from supermarkets. We had 2 truckloads turn up from Waitrose, and we couldn't get through all of that. And you think that food is just going to waste. So it's quite scary in a way, but we are so grateful for it. We grow bamboo on site. We buy in things like gum. So gum is something we make up at night for the primates. So we buy that in. Which is just like edible gum that we can buy. I think the most specialist foods are probably, there's something called low fee that we need to give some of our reptiles, like a sodium thing. I think definitely with our reptiles, they do need specialized supplements in their food. So that's probably be the most specialized, but we can obviously buy them in. Also, we buy in a lot of meat, so we've got a lot of carnivores on site. So there's a meat process in place that gets a lot of horse carcass. We buy in. That's on the bone and meat as well, loose meat as well. Rats, chicks, mice, quail, rabbits, chickens. Yeah, all sorts of things.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Tony.
Dean, what are your 2 most favourite animals and why?
Tony, good question. Hello, mate. So my top favourite, I look after all these exotic animals. I love them all to bits, but my favourite is always donkeys. And I think I get the love for donkeys from my mum because she had donkeys when she was young. They're just so gentle. They've got beautiful eyes. They always want to, they see me in the morning. So when I come up the path in the mornings at 7:30, they're calling out for me. If they see me during the day, they call out and come running over. So I've just got this affinity with donkeys. I just love them to bits. I think if you ever go to a donkey sanctuary around the country, it's a wonderful thing to do. Support them as well. If I had to choose another one, Tony, I would probably say the pygmy slow loris, simply because it's here for an EEP. Pygmy slow loris, unfortunately, are used in the pet trade a lot out in Asia. There's some awful YouTube videos of them being cuddled by people, and everyone thinks they're really cute. They are cute, but they're certainly not there to be cuddled. So I think because of the impact on the pygmy slow loris in the wild, there's some great work going out in China now, conservation centres around pygmy slow loris, but they are a big favourite of mine as well. And we have bred here successfully in the past, and we're hoping to do so with Mo and Hugo Loris. If anyone's a football fan, I think that's a goalkeeper at Tottenham, maybe, Tony, I don't know. But yeah, Mo and Hugo are in the nocturnal house. They're one of my favourites as well. Good question.
Did you say they were venomous?
Yeah, they've got a gland on their elbow, and if they lick this gland, they can get venom into their saliva. They coat their young in this venom to protect them. Sounds quite a strange thing to do. And they're quite territorial, so they will defend their territories quite a lot as well. Obviously, resources, when you get deforestation, resources drop. So yeah, they're quite territorial. Always arboreal. They're always living in trees. Close relation of the bush baby in Africa. Actually, going back to Kenya, when I was in Kenya, we sat around a campfire one night, and we heard this rustling above us, and there's this bush baby looking down at us, and it was the most wondrous sight for a bunch of young zoologists. So that was an amazing thing to see. But yeah, so they are venomous. Bush babies aren't, but pygmy slow loris are. Yeah.
Any other questions? Do just unmute yourself and shout out, because I can't see everybody, but if there's anyone else who'd like to ask anything. Can you perhaps tell us a bit more about the history? You said it was founded as a sort of rescue centre. Why was it founded? What led to the sort of need for the rescue centre, or was it a hobby? Or
yeah, good question. I'm going to walk and talk, so I'm going to go back into the light. So we're going to go back to the unit. So It was founded out of sheer passion for animals, really. The Willers family have always had a great passion for animals. And when they moved to Shepreth, Terry actually built a house in Great Wilbraham, actually. But when they moved to Shepreth, it was just a passion for animals. It was just a love for animals. And as I say, they found out that some animals needed rescuing. It was totally different site to what it is now. So it was quite barren. They built up a lot. They built a lake here, grew a lot of trees, obviously built the enclosures as well. So they've done a lot of work here. Yeah, just a love for animals. And then over time, as I say, they got more and more animals. And they started to open up for the public. Obviously, when you have animals, you need money coming in. And it's very difficult to do that when you're just a rescue centre. And then when more exotic animals needed rescuing, they actually had to make that decision about what route they take. And I think you can do so much more with conservation than you can as a rescue centre. Rescue centres are so important, don't get me wrong. But from their passion, they could sort of do a lot more conservation through breeding programs.
Do you have relationships with other zoos around? I mean, Linton and
yeah,
and places like that.
Yeah, we have a very good relationship with other zoos. People always think there's probably a bit of competition there. During lockdown, we were fortunate enough to get lots of donations of food. And on my way home to Great Wilbraham, I would stop in at Linton and drop them off any food that we didn't want. And then they would do the same for us. So we really helped each other out over lockdown, which was a very difficult time. We didn't have any money coming in. There's only 4 members of staff on site at a time. It's very difficult to get all the jobs done, really long days. But I think the love between zoos is so important. We had Jimmy's Farm here today, dropping a crate off, and they invited us over for a barbecue, which is wonderful. We've got an award ceremony coming up at Duckford next week, where all small zoos, small attractions, we've been nominated for an award, which is great. So we're going to see Jimmy's Farm there as well. Even the big zoos like London, Whipsonade, Chester, they put on conferences. So we've got Aardvark conference coming up soon, and a lot of our keepers are going to this conference. One of them is actually talking there. She's going to create a keeper exchange program, which is fantastic. And I think if you didn't have that relationship, you wouldn't be sharing information. You wouldn't be, it would be for the detriment of the animals if you didn't have a good relationship. I think it probably could have been quite competitive in the past, but you want to do away. It's not about people. When egos come into zoos, big egos, it doesn't work. You need to think about the animals, really. I think that's the most important thing. And the guys here have got an amazing team here. It's only a small team, but it's an amazing team. We have a lot of students as well on their gap year who come here to learn and gain experience. And yeah, they go on to other zoos. So we've got, in the past, we've had students here who have gone on to London, Chester, Woburn. We've got one chap who's here at the moment who's going to start a job at Woburn in a week's time. So you get to, it's quite a small world in the zoo world. We call it an industry, and I think it's nice that it is. And as I say, egos don't work really.
So also, perhaps could you tell us a bit more about who the staff is? I mean, you say it's quite a small team, but what you got? What sort of roles are there? I mean, you mentioned the reptile and
yeah. So Rebecca and Nick are directors of the park, and they are Terry's son and daughter. Now, you've probably seen Rebecca maybe on news articles in the past. She's very good at getting the name out there, pro zoo, and talking about what we're doing on site. Rebecca Willers is the most fantastic boss I've ever had. She's so supportive. She's got such passion and drive. She taught me never to say no. If you do have to say no, you have to find a different way of doing something. So she's taught me a lot. She's fantastic. And then Nick, bless him, he he does a lot of the maintenance. He does a lot of the running of the park. He's on the gun team as well. We have a lot of security on site, so he deals with all of that. And I think Nick is whereas Bex has a lot of the passion, Nick's the common sense who will say yes or no, we can't do things. So I think they balance each other out so well. We have Sally, our operations manager. She sorts out things like the vet visits and a lot of the cafeteria and the shop stuff. Terry still lives on site, so he does the odd jobs around the park. Funny story about Terry. One Christmas day when I was working, I walked past Terry and he was working on site. And I said, "Oh, happy Christmas, Terry." And he turned to me and he said, "Oh, it is quite Christmassy, isn't it?" So Terry just loves being on site all the time. And it's just like his back garden. He just enjoys it. And he has such passion for animals as well. And then we have the keeping staff.
The actual international news of Aardvarks getting.
We have sorry, I don't know if there's a question there. We have the keeping staff as well. So there's 2 curators, 2 head keepers, and about 4 keeping staff as well.
Right. Okay. And then various interns and students and other people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've got lots of long-term placements and students and volunteers. And you don't even have to have a background in animal science to be a volunteer. Some people are like retired, or they've got a day off that they want to fill, and they come along and join in here. And as I say, it's good for mental health. You get outdoors, you can work indoors if you want. You get to work with the animals. We even get them to do the talks. We try to encourage our long-term placements. We train them up so they can have keys and go and do the talks, obviously with our supervision. So we try to give them as much independence as possible as well.
Right, thank you.
Dean, we were there one day, Dean, when an outside vet came to do an inspection.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us how that works?
Yes, so we have regular checks, and this is so important as well. If a zoo isn't part of the ARSA, which some zoos aren't, they're probably not getting regularly checked. And the checks include your vet room, so that's all your medication. Is that being correctly recorded? It includes your meat storage, your fridges, your food storage. Is anyone having a cup of tea in the prep room, which I never do, honestly. So it's all sort of checking we're doing the right thing. And they also go around and check all the enclosures. So they check the space in the enclosure. Does it have access to food and water? Does it have access to UV and heating? And without these checks, you probably would miss things, or hopefully not purposely, but the animals may well suffer. So these checks are done by BIASA. We also get checked by the local authorities as well. I think that's Hertfordshire, I'm not sure. It might be South Cambs, but we have regular checks from the local authorities. And actually, we've got a check coming up as well. They check our, I forget what we call it now, where you do risk assessments. So they're going to check all our risk assessments as well soon. So we encourage this because we want to know that we're doing the right thing, and we want advice and experience from other people as well. So it's really important. But yeah, Tony, we probably did come in on a check. Did I look worried and panicked? I hope not.
Yeah, you did.
Just my natural demeanour, Tony.
One more question from the chat is: will the aardvarks breed? Are they?
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, they will breed. There was an aardvark born at Chester Zoo very recently, and I haven't seen that one, but my colleague Sam and I were lucky enough to go down to Colchester when one of their aardvark were born. Now, aardvarks don't take to the teats very well, and you have to have someone always there when they're young are born to make sure they attach themselves to the teats and feed. Also, like a pig, aardvarks can roll on their young quite easily, so you have to make sure you have the correct area in your enclosure so that the mum can't roll onto her young during the night. Now, in the early days, part of that may mean 24-hour care. So if anyone wants to volunteer to look after an aardvark pup, do get in touch. But it might mean me perhaps spending some nights here with a sleeping bag and a cup of tea, of course, just watching an aardvark. Hopefully we will get some babies born here. we have got some very, very, very good news about a birth on site, which I'm not allowed to say, I'm afraid. You're all going to hate me so much. But we've had some amazing news, which is quite rare to happen. And we're going to release it probably on our website or our Facebook page after the 1st of March. So do watch this space.
We'll look out for that. Natalie, I see you've got your hands raised. Would you?
Hi, Dean. It's your favourite cousin.
Hello, Natalie. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. First of all, I want to say the family are really proud of you and everything that you do.
Thank you.
Your tea's ready, so hurry up. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
Also, are you guys doing the experiences like what Connor came on before, the Zookeeper Experiences? Because that was amazing. If anybody else wanted to do that.
Oh, fantastic. It's lovely having Connor on site. So our experiences, you can do a half-an-hour experiences like meet the aardvark, meet the lemurs, meet the otters, and all that money, part of that money goes to conservation charities as well. So part of the money they pay. You can also do junior keeper a day, and I think that's what Connor did. So you spend all day with a keeper and you walk around and you do all the jobs the keeper's doing. So my part of the day for junior keeper is feeding the bats and grooming the donkeys as well. 2 things I love doing. But it's you know, Natalie, it's so nice having the kids come to the park, because it gets you quite emotional, because you can see their passion. Kids have so much passion for animals and conservation. They know so much more than I did at that age. I think it's through watching things like David Attenborough and reading the news about conservation and habitat loss and everything. So when we get them on site, they know a lot more than we do sometimes, which is quite amazing. So they come out with all these ridiculous facts about animals, which aren't ridiculous, they're true, but I would never have thought of. So it's so nice having the kids come on site and doing the experiences, because it sort of ignites our passion as well.
Right.
It's definitely recommended.
Sorry. A couple more questions. John, would you like to unmute and ask?
So do you use specialised vets who just work on zoo animals, or are they local general vets who do pets and other animals as well?
Good question. So we do have, Steve is our general vet. He's our 24-hour-a-day vet. He lives just outside Cambridge, but he doesn't just come to us. He comes to Linton Zoo. I think he goes right down to Colchester. He goes to Jimmy's Farm. I think he goes up north to various zoos as well. So it's quite widespread across East Anglia and sort of Lincolnshire and down south. He will be our once a month vet visit. So he comes once a month and we have a vet list that he works through. He's also on call. Recently, we had to call him out of the cinema. He was watching a new James Bond film with his lovely wife. We had to call him out and he had to leave the film and come out to us in an emergency. So he is always on call. We have Royston vets in Royston just down the road. If we want to take, say, a domestic rabbit, we have a lot of unwanted pets on site. So Bunnyland is full of unwanted pets, all our rabbits. So we can always run a domestic up to Royston. We have the equine vets as part of Cambridge University. They're fantastic vet school down there. And they've got an equine farm there as well. And they've got some fantastic vets. I love them to bits. They come out and they look at our donkeys and pony. So they make sure they're well in check. And as Bex always says, when it comes to vets, money is no object. It's about, that is our first priority, making sure the animals are fine. So we have sort of 3 vets that we sort of deal with, but Steve is our main vet. And he's part of IZVG, International IZ Zoos Veterinary Group, I think.
Thank you. And perhaps Mary Painter, if we might.
Thank you.
Give the last question.
Yeah.
Dean, I was just interested where your funding comes from. It must cost such a lot of money to run the zoo, and how far do the takings from visitors cover your costs? And if not, where does the other funding come from? You said in COVID that, you know, obviously your visit numbers were down a lot. And how do you manage that?
Good question, mate. So obviously intake footfall through the shop, the admission, goes a long way, which is good. We make most of our money over the summer. Over the winter, obviously, we sometimes are at a loss, but hopefully with a nice busy summer, which we actually had last year, which is fantastic. I think a lot of people were staying local, going to local attractions. So we were able to get a lot of money in over summer, which sometimes sees us through the winter. We're also fortunate enough to get a lot of grants and help that way. Being a small zoo, there's a lot of grants available, and Rebecca Willers is very good at submitting to grants and everything. Obviously, our charity days, most of that money goes into the conservation programs, which we help run, but it also helps run the Hedgehog Hospital, which is on site as well. But yes, during COVID, it was very difficult. We were obviously at a loss, but I think there was government funding which we were able to apply for, which really helped us out as well. Because I think a lot of zoos, I think a few zoos did close, sadly, very sadly, but a lot of zoos did struggle during COVID. And but hopefully we're in a better now. We're so far, we've had a good half term. Yesterday was very busy. Today, I think the wind and rain kept people away a little bit.
I think people as well have got used to going out more during COVID. That they spend less time inside, and that will continue, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's nice to get out and about. Our original COVID protocol was a one-way system. And we had to be very careful in buildings. Obviously, we had to shut some of our buildings, but most of the park now is open, which is fantastic. There's not a one-way system anymore, so I'm not going against the traffic. I think people like getting out and about. And we are a small zoo. It's good for small families. It's also good for any people really to come along. There's quite a lot to see here. And as I say, talks every half hour. And if any of you do come along and you see me, do shout and say hello and who you are, and I'll show you perhaps something up close.
Very kind, thank you. I think we should perhaps wrap it up there, but thank you very much for telling us and showing us the Aardvarks and the
Thank you.
They were fantastic, and thank you for a wonderful talk. So
no, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm a big fan of the Wilburns, obviously, having lived there all my life. So I love the village to bits. So I'm happy to do anything like that. Thank you.